Pokemon just revealed a new type as well as potentially new forms of Pokemon. Let's break it all down. Welcome back to the Lumiose Post, where we talk about all things Pokemon, and today we are going to be talking about the 19th type as well as what this means for the franchise and some little hidden details about this reveal, including potential new forms of Pokemon. So first off, let's talk about this type, because saying it's a 19th type is only half accurate, really. While this is going to function like a type, it is very different, because this type will not be given to Pokemon that you can just kind of naturally find. Like, it's not like there's going to be a brand new Pokemon in the Indigo Disk, which is where this will be debuting, by the way, and me run into it and it be this new type. It's not like we're going to get an evolution that's this new type. Nothing like that. But instead, this is a new type that Pokemon can terrestrialize into. And that's pretty freaking cool, honestly. I love that they've made this gimmick that specializes with type now have its own type. That's super, super cool. But by revealing this, I think, personally, that they have revealed new forms of Pokemon that are going to terrestrialize into this type. And let me explain. I'm going to have this video playing on a loop while I'm talking about this, so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But when they showed this new gimmick, they showed like the terrestrial hat, if you will, at the end. And if you watch the video, it's even like the way they have it shown is like a Pokemon is terrestrializing into this type. You can see the crown form, and then you can see like it kind of move back and I guess like reverberate like a Pokemon does when it, you know, terrestrializes. They'll terrestrialize and then like let out their cry and kind of, you know, shake, and so the hat will shake, and you're seeing this crown do this. But I think the choice here to not show the Pokemon wearing the hat is kind of interesting, you know, because what's the shame? Why not just show Charizard terrestrializing? You already showed me what the hat is, so I already know what it's going to look like, right? Wrong. It's because these Pokemon are going to have new forms that they can terrestrialize into in this type. And this actually makes a lot of sense. I know a lot of people are seeing this picture of Excalibur with the terrestrial type and going, oh, well, this means that any Pokemon will be able to terrestrialize into this type. And I don't think that's true at all. I think this just means that Excalibur is one of the few Pokemon that will be able to terrestrialize into this type. Because, again, I think that it makes sense for why they didn't show us the Pokemon underneath the crown. They only wanted to show us the crown because there was a special form underneath the crown, right? That makes sense to me. But then also, it does make sense from a balancing standpoint as well, because you are going to have the issues of, if this is a very broken type, and it will be competitive, they're not going to throw in something stupid into the game. They're going to want it to shake up VGC a little bit. So depending on how broken it is, limiting the amount of mons that can get it can keep the other terrestrial types relevant, you know, because, like, for example, a very popular Pokemon in VGC, and there's no signs of this changing, is Fluttermane. Fluttermane is super, super popular, but if Fluttermane doesn't get access to this terrestrial type, well, people are still going to run Fluttermane. They're not going to drop it for this thing. But instead, what this will do is very similar to what Mega Evolution did, or even Gigantamax forms did. This will give some Pokemon that maybe can't shine a chance to shine. So, for example, a Pokemon that is not really competitive at all is Spidops. Well, Spidops getting a terrestrial form that, you know, is kind of broken and having this special form with it, well, that would make a lot more players potentially opt for Spidops. Now, truthfully, with its base stat total, I don't know anything that this new terrestrial type could do that would help Spidops, but you get my point. If you give it out to every Pokemon, it will be a little too broken. This will allow players to still opt for normal Terra types because they have to, right? Fluttermane can't be this 19th type, so I'm going to have to just run Terra Water Fluttermane, or whatever it may be. If you kind of want a more in-depth breakdown of this and its impacts on VGC, or even just competitive in general, like whether it's singles or doubles, I will be talking about that over on LumioseTower, so make sure you go check that out. That is my battle channel. I do competitive discussions, battles, etc., etc. But what Pokemon will be able to get this Terrestrial type? Well, obviously, we know Baxcalibur will be able to, because we see it right here in the screenshot. So Baxcalibur will get a Terraform, if I am right on that. And then we also know that Terapagos is getting this, because in the Scarlet and Violet book, you will see that Terapagos clearly has this crown on it. And that just makes sense because they are referring to Terapagos, this form, as the Terrestrial form, whereas this form is just normal form. So it makes sense that the Terrestrial form will be the form that it takes when it, you guessed it, terrestrialized, right? That just makes sense. Even if Pokemon don't take a new appearance, like even if Baxcalibur doesn't change to have spikes all over its body, and, you know, gets a whole different appearance like Mega Evolution or Gigantamax, like a whole new design, even if that's not the case, I do think that them hiding the Pokemon is at least evidence that there's going to be some kind of change to how these Pokemon look. You know, when a Pokemon is terrestrialized, they get this kind of crystalline structure, like as if they're made of glass. I think that maybe at least that will change. You know, if you look at Terapagos' Terrestrial form, it isn't so much glassy looking as much as it is glossy looking, honestly, and it has more of a glow to it. So perhaps that'll be the case now, is that maybe Baxcalibur doesn't get a form, but Baxcalibur will get a new texture that is different from the regular Terrestrial texture. And if this is the case, then I do think that any Pokemon would be able to get this 19th type, because then you're just changing a texture. You're not actually having to design a second type for every single Pokemon in the game. But now I want to talk about what this means in-game, like what the lore behind this 19th type is. Why is there a 19th type when Pokemon terrestrialize? Well, this all goes back to the creator of terrestrialization, of course, and that is Terapagos. So the thing that we are starting to believe about Terapagos is that Terapagos is able to kind of warp reality, at least on a small scale, and is able to even read the minds of people and bring their imaginations to life. We believe these Paradox Pokemon are indeed not from the past or the future, but instead from the imaginations of Heath, his exploration team, Professor Sada, and Professor Turo. And it's just Terapagos has brought their imaginations to life. Very similar to WandaVision, if any of you are familiar with that. In there, Wanda, the titular character, does warp reality. Like, she makes everything look like it's back in an older time, and like I remember that a drone she changes into like a toy airplane or something, you know. So all of that to say that that's kind of what Terapagos is doing. Terapagos is Wanda. Terapagos is the Scarlet Witch. There it is. But running with that, this will mean that Terapagos has kind of altered the way types work. But specifically, he has created a new type, but that type only exists in Terapagos' own gimmick. You know, the gimmick that Terapagos created. That makes sense for why this type doesn't exist. Why I can't find Pokemon with this type is because it's imaginary. It is just created by a Pokemon that also created this gimmick, which is why it is locked only to this gimmick. This would also explain why in Paldea we have not seen this, you know, 19th Terrestrial type, is because Terapagos, we don't know where it is. The fact that it is tied to Blueberry Academy and the Indigo Disk makes me think it could be appearing there, or maybe even it's so far down in Area 0 that we didn't even quite go to where it was. I imagine that just like in WandaVision, to keep using that as a reference, how Wanda's powers only affected Westview, only the little town she was in, I imagine that that's the same case with Terapagos. His powers are only spanning there. It's also why Terrestrial is not a phenomenon that you're seeing in the Galar or the Kalos region, right? It's because it's only places that Terapagos has had, like, an actual impact on, or has actually visited, can it impact that area and create this gimmick there for it. And that's, again, why you're only seeing these 19th types now, is because Terapagos is here now, so we're getting the full front of its power. As you get closer and closer to Terapagos, you're going to see more and more crazy things. It's the same reason Area 0 is home to these Paradox Pokemon, when you can't really find them outside of Area Zero, aside from Great Tusk and Iron Treads, who really are only outside of Area Zero because they happen to escape Area Zero. Now, the question, though, is Terapagos doing this on its own? Is Terapagos just kind of creating a new type for Terrastal? Or is Terapagos using someone's imagination yet again? If it was using Heath or Sada or Turo's imagination to create the Paradox Pokemon, whose imagination is it doing this time? Like, whose is it using this time? So you have Briar is a very big option, I think, because Briar very clearly is related to Heath and has, you know, the little Terrastal earrings. She has a violet outfit, and she has scarlet pants, and she even has, like, the embroidery on her jacket, I guess is what it is. I don't know types of clothing. I'm not into fashion. I'm wearing a freaking, like, $10 t-shirt from JCPenney. But you have the kind of design of the violet box, right? The violet box art. So very likely she's going to be tied to Terapagos. So I could see Terapagos taking her imagination and bringing the 19th type to life. It could also be Serrano. You know, Serrano runs a school that is focused on battling. You know what will really spice up battling? A new type. Just look how Fairy did it back in Generation 6. So it makes sense that, you know, it could be Serrano as well. One of those two characters I could easily see it being, or maybe it's just Terapagos goofing around and doing whatever it wants, and it's unrelated to these people. But no matter the case, this actually is huge. If this is indeed the reason this type exists, because Terapagos is creating it from someone's imagination, or even just, you know, kind of willing it into existence from its own imagination, it's huge for the Terrastal phenomenon, it's huge for Paradox Pokemon, all those things. If we do indeed get the confirmation that Terapagos can basically warp reality and bring ideas to life, it means that the Terrastal phenomenon is basically fake. That's just Terapagos creating something, right? The Paradox Pokemon, again, basically fake. They're not truly ancestors or descendants, ancestors or descendants. I had that right. They are actually just imaginary Pokemon. And then that kind of gets even more interesting, because if we are to believe that there are going to be new forms for some Pokemon that can terrestrialize into this 19th type, so like Baxcalibur, to keep using that as the example, if it does take on a new form when it terrestrializes into this 19th type, that means that this new form of Baxcalibur that we'll see is also created from Terapagos' imagination, which does kind of make you think maybe you can easily figure out from there what kind of design Baxcalibur could get. You know, looking at the Paradox Pokemon, you have more dino, more rough prehistoric features, and then for the future versions, you have more robotic, more futuristic LEDs kind of thing. And there's a lot of Pokemon, especially introduced in Paldea in Gen 9, that it's really easy to imagine them getting something like this. Like, I could very easily see Baxcalibur becoming even more dino-like and getting an even more rugged form, whereas a Pokemon like Lokix kind of looks a little robotic, so I could see Lokix getting a more futuristic looking form. But again, these wouldn't be paradoxes of Lokix and Baxcalibur, not in the same vein as Suicune or Virizion getting a paradox. These would be only accessible in battle and would just probably be aesthetic, given that they're taking on a brand new type. I imagine they're not going to get a stat boost or anything, but still something really interesting to think about. Either way, the idea that we are getting a 19th type that only exists in Terrastal, albeit, that's just huge. I mean, this is so big, guys. And then also there's the fact that, you know, there could be new forms alongside this. That's even crazier, right? I mean, I'm so excited to see what this is. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below, so please drop them there. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications as well, because as we get more information about these things, we're definitely going to be talking about it, theorizing on it, speculating on it, all that fun stuff. You don't want to miss that, so again, like, subscribe, and hit the bell. And until next time, I will see all of you later.